The sound of a woman sobbing broke the morning silence like a stone through glass, and Graham Bishop froze with his hand still gripping the water bucket, every muscle in his body tensing as he scanned the tree line along his creek. It was late summer in 1876, and the Wyoming territory stretched out wild and unforgiving around his modest homestead just outside the small settlement of Shoshone. Graham had carved out this piece of land 3 years ago after leaving behind a life of cattle drives and gunfights, seeking nothing more than peace and solitude. At 27, he had seen enough violence to last several lifetimes, and he wanted no part of whatever trouble might be approaching his property now. The crying continued, raw and desperate, coming from the cottonwood grove about 50 yards downstream. Graham set down his bucket carefully and moved toward the sound with cautious steps, his hand hovering near the revolver at his hip out of habit rather than aggression. He had learned to be careful in this territory, where tensions between settlers and native tribes ran as hot as summer lightning. But something about the genuine anguish in those sobs made him move forward despite his better judgment. When he pushed through the hanging branches, he found her sitting on the creek bank with her knees pulled up to her chest, her whole body shaking with the force of her weeping. She was young, probably around 20 or 21, with long black hair that fell in a thick braid down her back. She wore traditional Shoshone clothing, beautifully decorated with intricate beadwork that spoke of skilled hands and careful attention. Her face was buried in her arms, and she seemed completely unaware of his presence. Graham cleared his throat softly, not wanting to startle her. "Miss, are you hurt?" Her head snapped up, dark eyes wide with fear and surprise. For a moment he thought she might bolt like a startled deer, but instead she just stared at him with tears streaming down her face. Up close, he could see that she was even younger than he first thought, with delicate features that were currently twisted with grief. There was a fresh bruise forming on her cheekbone, and her wrists bore red marks as though someone had grabbed her roughly. "Please," she said in English that was accented but clear. "Please, I mean no trouble, I will go." "Hold on now," Graham said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You are on my land, that is true, but I am not going to hurt you. Are you injured? Do you need help?" She wiped at her face with trembling hands, seeming to struggle with whether to trust him or run. Graham slowly lowered himself to sit on a fallen log several feet away, giving her space while showing he was not going to chase her. He had dealt with frightened animals enough to know that sometimes the best thing you could do was make yourself less threatening. "My name is Graham Bishop," he said quietly. "This is my homestead. That creek runs through my property. I heard you crying and wanted to make sure you were all right." "Maya," she whispered, so softly he almost missed it. "My name is Maya Morningstar." "That is a beautiful name," Graham said honestly. "Can you tell me what happened to your face? Who hurt you?" Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks and she looked away toward the rushing water. "My cousin. He wants me to marry his friend, a warrior from another band. I do not want this. I told them no, but they do not listen. My cousin, he grabbed me, hit me when I tried to refuse again. I ran. I did not know where I was going, I just ran until I could not run anymore." Graham felt anger kindle in his chest at the thought of anyone striking this young woman, though he kept his voice calm. "Where is your family, your parents?" "Dead," she said, the word falling like a stone. "Fever took them both 2 winters ago. My cousin became head of our family. He makes decisions for me now, or he thinks he does. But I will not marry Standing Wolf. I will not." The determination in her voice, even through the tears, impressed Graham. She had spirit, this one, despite her current predicament. "What will you do?" Maya shook her head helplessly. "I do not know. If I go back, my cousin will force this marriage. He says Standing Wolf paid good horses, gave gifts. He says it is done, decided. But I do not love this man. I barely know him. He is cruel. I have seen how he treats his dogs, how he speaks to women. I will not spend my life with such a person." Graham sat in silence for a moment, considering. He knew he should probably stay out of this, that getting involved in tribal matters could bring him nothing but trouble. But looking at Maya's bruised face and seeing the genuine fear in her eyes, he found he could not simply turn his back. "Listen," he said slowly. "You can stay here for a while, catch your breath, get some water. I have a cabin just up the hill. Nothing fancy, but it is solid and safe. You can rest there until you figure out what you want to do next." Maya looked at him with suspicion mixed with desperate hope. "Why would you help me? You do not know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Graham said simply. "And because no one should be forced into marriage against their will. That is true whether you are white, native, or anything else. A person should have a choice about who they spend their life with." She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. Graham held her gaze steadily, letting her see that he meant what he said. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Just for a little while," she said, "until I can think of what to do." Graham stood and offered his hand to help her up. She hesitated before taking it, and he noticed how small and cold her fingers felt in his palm. Up close, he could see that she had been crying for quite some time. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she seemed exhausted both physically and emotionally. They walked up the hill to his cabin in silence, Graham keeping his pace slow so she could keep up. He noticed she limped slightly on her left foot, and he wondered if she had injured it during her flight through the wilderness. His cabin sat in a clearing with a good view of the surrounding land, built solid with thick logs and a stone chimney. It was not much to look at, but it was his, built with his own hands over the course of that first hard winter. "Wait here," he said when they reached the door. He went inside first, quickly looking around to make sure everything was decent. His housekeeping was not the best, but at least it was reasonably clean and organized. He grabbed a blanket from his bed and brought it out to where Maya waited on the porch. "Here," he said, draping it around her shoulders. "You are shaking. Come inside, I will make some coffee." The interior of the cabin was simple but functional. A stone fireplace dominated one wall with a rough-hewn table and 2 chairs positioned nearby. His bed sat in one corner, neatly made, and shelves lined another wall holding supplies and a few precious books he had managed to keep through all his travels. The morning light came through the single window, illuminating dust motes in the air. Maya stepped inside cautiously, looking around as though memorizing every detail in case she needed to make a quick escape. Graham busied himself with the coffee pot, giving her time to settle. He added wood to the banked coals in the fireplace and set the pot to heat, then pulled out the other chair for her. "Please sit," he said. "You must be tired." She sat slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Now that she was in better light, Graham could see that her clothing, while beautiful, was torn in places from running through brush. Small scratches marked her arms and there were leaves tangled in her hair. She looked completely worn out and his heart went out to her. "How long have you been running?" he asked gently. "Since before dawn," she said quietly. "They were sleeping. I waited until I was sure everyone slept deeply, then I left. I took nothing, just ran. I knew if I tried to prepare, someone would see and stop me." Graham poured coffee into 2 tin cups as soon as it was ready, adding a generous spoonful of precious sugar to hers before handing it over. She took it gratefully, wrapping both hands around the warm cup and breathing in the steam. "Thank you," she murmured. "You are very kind to a stranger." "We are all strangers until we are not," Graham said, settling into the other chair with his own coffee. "Besides, Kindness costs nothing, and it might be the most valuable thing we can give each other out here." They sat in companionable silence for a while, drinking their coffee and listening to the crackle of the fire. Graham found himself studying Maya when she was not looking, noticing things he had missed before in his initial surprise at finding her. She had an elegant way of moving, even in her exhausted state, and there was intelligence in her eyes that suggested a quick mind. When she finally relaxed enough to lower the blanket slightly, he saw that the beadwork on her dress was truly exceptional, depicting birds and flowers in stunning detail. "Did you make that yourself?" he asked, gesturing to her dress. Maya looked down and touched the beadwork with gentle fingers. "Yes, my mother taught me. She was very skilled. People would come from far away to trade for her work. I am not as good as she was, but I try to honor what she taught me." "It is beautiful work," Graham said honestly. "Your mother must have been a remarkable woman." "She was," Maya said, and new tears welled in her eyes. "She would not have let my cousin treat me this way. She believed women should have voices, should be able to choose. My father respected her opinions, listened to her, but my cousin is different. He thinks women are property, things to be traded for horses and status." Graham felt his jaw tighten with anger again, but he kept his voice level. "How long has your cousin been trying to arrange this marriage?" 3 months, Maya said bitterly. "Standing Wolf saw me at a gathering and decided he wanted me. He went to my cousin, made offerings. My cousin saw a chance to gain wealth and alliance with Standing Wolf's band, and he did not care what I wanted. Every time I refused, he became angrier. Last night, he told me the ceremony would happen in 3 days whether I agreed or not. When I said I would run away rather than marry Standing Wolf, that is when he hit me. And there is no one else in your tribe who will stand up for you." Maya shook her head sadly. "Some of the older women, they sympathize, but they will not openly defy the men's decisions. It is not our way to interfere in family matters. My cousin is within his rights as head of my family, or so they say. There is one elder, Grandmother Willow, she spoke for me, said perhaps my wishes should be considered, but even she could not change my cousin's mind." Graham set down his coffee cup and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Maya, I meant what I said before. You can stay here as long as you need to, but we need to think about what happens when your cousin comes looking for you, because he will come looking." "I know," she whispered. "He will be very angry. He will think I have shamed him by running away. And Standing Wolf, he will want what he paid for." The way she said those last words, as though she were nothing more than goods purchased at a trading post, made Graham's blood boil. He stood and paced to the window, looking out over his land. He had worked hard to stay out of trouble, to build a peaceful life away from the violence and chaos that had defined his youth. But he could not ignore this, could not send this young woman back to a fate she clearly feared and despised. "Then we will face that when it comes," he said firmly. "But I will not let anyone take you from here against your will, that much I can promise you." Maya looked at him with an expression of mixed gratitude and disbelief. "You would stand against my tribe for a stranger. You could be killed. They could burn your home." "Maybe," Graham acknowledged. "But I have faced worse odds and lived to tell about it. Besides, it is not about standing against your tribe. It is about standing up for what is right. No one should be forced into marriage. No one should be beaten for refusing. Those are truths that transcend culture or custom." She stood slowly, still wrapped in the blanket, and walked over to where he stood by the window. Up close, he could smell sage and wood smoke in her hair, and he found himself noticing just how lovely she was despite her tears and exhaustion. There was strength in her face, a resilience that spoke of someone who had endured hardship but refused to be broken by it. "Why do you live alone out here?" she asked quietly. A man like you could have a wife, family, but you live like a hermit in the wilderness." Graham smiled slightly, though there was sadness in it. "I have been many things in my life, Maya. A soldier, a gunfighter, a drover pushing cattle up from Texas. I have killed men and seen good friends die. I came out here to get away from all that, to find some peace. I am not sure I am the marrying kind, to be honest. Most women want a man who can give them security, a nice house in town, neighbors and church socials. I have nothing to offer but this rough cabin and a piece of land that is more rocks than soil." "Some women might value peace and honesty more than fancy houses," Maya said, looking up at him. "Some women might think a man who helps strangers without expecting anything in return is worth more than all the houses in all the towns." Their eyes met and held, and Graham felt something shift in his chest, a sensation he had not experienced in years. He was about to respond when the sound of horses approaching made them both freeze. Graham moved quickly to the door, his hand going to his gun as he peered out. "Stay inside," he said quietly. "No matter what happens, stay inside and stay quiet." But Maya had already moved to the window, looking out with wide eyes. "It is them," she breathed. "It is my cousin and Standing Wolf. They found me." Graham could see them now, 6 riders approaching up the hill toward his cabin. They rode with purpose, and even from a distance he could see they were armed. This was going to get complicated very quickly. "Maya, get away from the window," Graham said firmly. "Go stand by the back wall." "They will kill you if they think you are keeping me from them," Maya said, fear clear in her voice. "Let me worry about that," Graham said. "Just stay quiet and let me handle this." The riders pulled up in front of the cabin, their horses snorting and stamping. Graham stepped out onto his porch, closing the door firmly behind him and taking a position where he could draw his weapon quickly if needed. He kept his hands visible and his expression neutral, using every bit of experience he had gained in tense situations over the years. The man who rode in front was clearly Maya's cousin. He had the same dark eyes and fine features, but where Maya's face showed intelligence and compassion, his showed only arrogance and anger. He was perhaps 30 years old, dressed in traditional clothing decorated with signs of status and wealth. The man beside him was older, maybe 40, with scars marking his face and a hard expression that Graham recognized immediately. This was a warrior, a man who had killed and would kill again without hesitation. Standing Wolf, no doubt. "White man," Maya's cousin said in heavily accented English. "You have something that belongs to me. My cousin, she ran from our camp. Tracks lead here. You will give her back now." Graham crossed his arms, keeping his stance relaxed but ready. "I do not have anything that belongs to you. People are not property to be owned." The cousin's eyes flashed with anger. "She is my family. I speak for her. She must obey." "Must she?" Graham said calmly. "Even when you beat her for refusing to marry a man she does not know, even when you ignore her wishes and treat her like goods to be traded." Standing Wolf spoke then, his voice a low growl. "You know nothing of our ways, white man. The woman was promised to me. I paid good horses. She will be my wife, and you will not stop this." "She will not be anyone's wife unless she chooses to be," Graham said, and he let his hand drift closer to his gun. "And from what I understand, she has made her choice very clear. No means no, regardless of how many horses you paid." The 4 warriors with them began to spread out, clearly preparing for violence. Graham assessed the situation quickly. He was a good shot, fast on the draw, but 6 against 1 were bad odds no matter how skilled you were. Still, he had faced worse, and he would not back down from this. Maya's cousin dismounted, his face dark with fury. "You dare to lecture me about our customs. You whites who take our land, kill our people, break every treaty. And now you would steal a woman from her family. I have not stolen anyone, Graham said quietly. I offered shelter to someone in need. That is all. And yes, I know my people have done terrible things to yours. I know the history, the broken promises, the injustice. But that does not make it right for you to force your cousin into a marriage she does not want. Two wrongs do not make a right. Standing Wolf dismounted as well, and the tension ratcheted up another notch. Enough talk. Give us the woman or we will take her, and you will die. That may be, Graham acknowledged, but I guarantee I will take at least 3 of you with me, maybe 4. You want to risk your life for a woman who clearly does not want you. What kind of marriage would that be anyway? She would hate you every day of her life. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across Standing Wolf's face. Graham pressed his advantage. Think about it. Do you really want a wife who despises you, who was forced to your side? Would that bring you honor? Would that bring you happiness? It would bring me a beautiful woman and the satisfaction of getting what I paid for, Standing Wolf snarled, but there was less conviction in his voice now. Before the situation could escalate further, the sound of more horses approaching made everyone turn. Graham felt his stomach sink, wondering what new trouble was arriving. But when he saw who rode at the head of this new group, he felt a small measure of hope. An old woman led this second party, riding despite her age with the bearing of someone who expected to be obeyed. Her face was lined with years of wisdom and weather, and she wore the elaborate dress of a respected elder. Several other women rode with her, along with 3 men who looked to be senior members of the tribe. This had to be Grandmother Willow, the elder Maya had mentioned. The old woman rode right up to Maya's cousin and spoke in rapid Shoshone, her voice sharp and commanding. Though Graham could not understand the words, the tone was unmistakable. This was a dressing down, a rebuke from someone who held authority. Maya's cousin actually took a step back, his face showing surprise and a hint of shame. The conversation went on for several minutes, with Grandmother Willow clearly dominating the exchange. She gestured toward the cabin, toward Graham, and spoke with increasing emphasis. Finally, she switched to English, and Graham understood that this was for his benefit as much as anyone's. "This is shameful," she said, her English clear and precise. "To beat a young woman because she will not marry. To chase her like an animal and threaten a man who offers her shelter. This is not our way. This is not the teaching of our ancestors." Maya's cousin tried to argue, but the old woman cut him off with a sharp gesture. "You forget yourself, Running Bear. You forget that before you became head of your family, your uncle asked me to watch over Maya to make sure she was cared for. You think I do not see what you have done? You think I do not know that you care more for Standing Wolf's horses than for your cousin's happiness?" Running Bear looked angry but uncertain. Grandmother Willow had clearly undermined his authority in front of everyone, and he was struggling with how to respond. Standing Wolf, however, was less impressed. "The girl was promised," he said stubbornly. "I paid good horses. This is not about happiness. This is about honor and keeping agreements." Grandmother Willow turned her sharp gaze on him. "And what honor is there in forcing yourself on an unwilling woman? What kind of man needs to buy a wife rather than win her heart? You shame yourself with this behavior, Standing Wolf." The warrior's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. For a moment, Graham thought he might actually attack the old woman, but even Standing Wolf was not foolish enough to strike a respected elder in front of witnesses. The door behind Graham suddenly opened, and Maya stepped out onto the porch. Graham wanted to tell her to go back inside, but the determined look on her face stopped him. She moved to stand beside him, facing her cousin and Standing Wolf with her chin raised defiantly, despite the tears still drying on her cheeks. "I will not marry you," she said clearly, speaking to Standing Wolf. "I do not care about horses or agreements made without my consent. I will not spend my life with a man I do not love, with a man who sees me as property. You can have your horses back. Tell Running Bear to return them." "But you cannot have me." Standing Wolf's face twisted with rage. "You dare to refuse me again, after I have been made to look foolish, after I have ridden all this way." "She is brave to speak her truth," Grandmother Willow said sharply. "More brave than you, who would force yourself on an unwilling woman. I say the engagement is broken. Return Standing Wolf's horses, Running Bear. Let this end." "You do not have the authority to break this agreement," Running Bear protested, but he sounded less certain now. "Do I not?" Grandmother Willow drew herself up regally. "I am elder of our band. I speak with the wisdom of our ancestors, and I say that Maya has the right to refuse this marriage. If you do not agree, we will take this before the council, and I promise you, they will not look favorably on a man who beats his female cousin and tries to sell her against her will." Graham watched the standoff, his hand still ready near his weapon, but hoping desperately that this could be resolved without violence. He found himself very aware of Maya standing beside him, of her shoulder almost touching his arm, of the way she trembled slightly despite her brave words. One of the men who had come with Grandmother Willow spoke up then, an older warrior with gray in his hair. "I agree with Grandmother Willow. This is not right. Maya should have a choice. Running Bear, you have brought shame on your family with this. Return the horses and let it end." Another murmur of agreement came from some of the others. Graham could see Running Bear's position crumbling as more of his own people sided against him. Standing Wolf, however, was not ready to give up. "Fine," he said coldly. "I will take my horses back. But you, Maya Morningstar, you have made an enemy today. And you, White Man, you have interfered in matters that are not your concern. This will not be forgotten." "I will take my chances," Graham said evenly. "And Maya will be safe here as long as she wants to stay." Maya's hand suddenly found his, her fingers gripping tight. Graham felt that jolt in his chest again, stronger this time. He squeezed her hand gently, offering what comfort and reassurance he could. Grandmother Willow dismounted with surprising agility for her age and walked up to the porch. She studied Graham carefully, her old eyes seeing far more than most people could. Then she turned to Maya and spoke in Shoshone. Maya responded in the same language, and they had a brief conversation that Graham could not follow. Finally, Grandmother Willow nodded and turned back to Graham. "Maya says you offered her shelter without expecting anything in return, that you have been kind and respectful. This is good. I am glad to know there are still people in this world who help strangers simply because it is right." "Anyone would have done the same," Graham said. "No," the old woman said firmly. "Many would not. Many would have turned away, not wanting trouble, or worse, they might have tried to take advantage of a young woman alone and frightened. That you did neither speaks well of your character." She reached into a pouch at her side and pulled out a beautifully crafted leather bracelet decorated with beads and feathers. "Take this," she said, handing it to Graham. "It is a gift, a token of my thanks for helping one of our young people. It marks you as a friend to our band. Should you ever need help, this will show that you are trusted." Graham took the bracelet carefully, honored by the gesture. "Thank you, Grandmother. I will wear it with pride." She smiled, deep wrinkles creasing her face. "You are a good man, Graham Bishop. I hope Maya's presence here will not bring you more trouble than you can handle." "I can handle it," Graham said, and found that he meant it. Looking at Maya, standing brave and defiant despite everything she had been through, he discovered that he would face down a lot worse than a few angry warriors to keep her safe. Grandmother Willow spoke again in Shoshone, addressing the whole group. Running Bear looked sullen but defeated. He mounted his horse without another word, though the look he shot at Maya and Graham was full of poison. Standing Wolf looked even angrier, but he too mounted up, clearly unwilling to push the issue further with so many witnesses speaking against him. "Come," Grandmother Willow said to the others who had accompanied her. "Let us return home. There is nothing more to be done here today." Before she left, she approached Maya and spoke to her quietly in Shoshone, placing a weathered hand on the young woman's cheek. Maya's eyes filled with tears again, but these seemed different from before, tears of gratitude rather than fear. She embraced the old woman carefully, and they held each other for a long moment. Then Grandmother Willow mounted her horse and led her group away, following after Running Bear and Standing Wolf and the others. Graham and Maya stood on the porch watching until all the riders disappeared from view, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Finally, Maya sagged against the porch railing, all the strength seeming to drain out of her. Graham caught her gently, supporting her weight as reaction set in. "Easy now," he said softly. "You did so well, you were so brave." "I was terrified," Maya admitted, her voice shaking. "I thought Standing Wolf would attack you. I thought Running Bear would force me to go with them." "But they did not," Graham said. "Thanks to Grandmother Willow and your own courage in speaking up. You stood up for yourself, Maya. That takes real strength." She looked up at him, and Graham found himself caught in the depths of her dark eyes. This close, he could see gold flecks in the brown, could see the way her lashes were still wet with tears. Something passed between them in that moment, something electric and undeniable. Graham felt his heart begin to beat faster, felt awareness of her flood through him in a way that was entirely new and somewhat terrifying. "You would have fought them," Maya said wonderingly. "You would have died to protect me, and you do not even know me." "I am getting to know you," Graham said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "And what I am learning I like very much." They stood there for a moment longer, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Maya stepped back, pulling her hand from his with what seemed like reluctance. "I should not stay here," she said quietly. "It will cause you nothing but trouble. I should go find somewhere else." "Where would you go?" Graham asked practically. "Back to your tribe where Running Bear can make your life miserable. Off into the wilderness alone. Maya, you heard Grandmother Willow. You are welcome here as long as you want to stay." "But people will talk," Maya said. "A native woman living with a white man, it will cause problems for both of us." "Let them talk," Graham said firmly. "I stopped caring what people thought of me a long time ago, and anyone who wants to make trouble will have to go through me first." Maya looked at him searchingly. "Why are you doing this? Really? No one is this kind without reason." Graham was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. "Maybe because I know what it is like to feel trapped, to have other people making decisions about your life. After the war, I did things I am not proud of, became a person I did not like. Coming out here, building this place, it was about taking back control of my own life. I understand why that matters, why it is worth fighting for. And maybe I just cannot stand by and watch someone else lose that same control." "The war," Maya said. "You fought in the white man's war," Graham nodded. "I was 17 when it started, 21 when it ended. I was too young and too stupid to understand what I was getting into. I thought it would be adventure and glory. Instead, it was mud and blood and watching boys die screaming for their mothers. Afterward, I was so angry, so lost. I drifted for years, hiring my gun out to whoever would pay. It was not a good life." "But you changed," Maya observed. "I tried to," Graham said. "I am still trying. Every day I try to be better than I was, to build something good instead of just destroying. It is not easy and I fail more often than I succeed, but I keep trying." Maya smiled slightly, the first real smile he had seen from her. It transformed her face, made her even more beautiful. "I think you succeed more than you know, Graham Bishop." They went back inside the cabin, and Graham busied himself making something to eat while Maya rested in the chair by the fire. He was not much of a cook, but he managed to put together a decent meal of beans, salt pork, and bread. They ate in companionable silence, the tension from the confrontation outside gradually easing. As the afternoon wore on, Graham found himself hyper-aware of Maya's presence in his small cabin. She moved around exploring a little, looking at his books and the few possessions he kept. Her fingers traced the titles on the worn spines, and he saw interest spark in her eyes. "You can read?" he asked, then immediately felt foolish. "I apologize, that was a stupid question." But Maya did not seem offended. "Yes, I can read. Missionaries came to our area when I was young. My mother thought learning the white man's words and writing could help us understand treaties and documents so we would not be cheated. She made sure I learned. I can read and write in English, though my handwriting is not very good." "That is more than many white folks can say," Graham said honestly. "I barely learned myself until I was in the army. What kind of books do you like?" "I have not read many," Maya admitted. "The missionaries had mostly religious books. But I remember one book about faraway places, countries across the ocean. I loved that book. I used to imagine traveling to those places, seeing things I had never seen before." Graham pulled a book from his shelf, one of his favorites. "Have you read this? It is about adventure on the sea, pirates and treasure and exotic lands." Maya took the book carefully, running her fingers over the cover. "Treasure Island," she read. "No, I have not read this one." "You should," Graham said. "Take it, read it while you are here." "I have read it 3 times already." The delight on her face was worth everything. She clutched the book to her chest like it was made of gold. "Thank you. I will be very careful with it, I promise." As evening approached, the practical problem of sleeping arrangements became apparent. Graham had only one bed, and while he would happily sleep on the floor, he could tell Maya was uncomfortable with the situation. "I have blankets," Graham said, reading her discomfort. "I will make a bedroll by the fire. You take the bed. I have slept in far worse places, believe me." "This will be like luxury." "I cannot take your bed," Maya protested. "You can and you will," Graham said firmly. "You have been through enough today, you need proper rest. Besides, I am used to rough sleeping. A few nights on the floor will not hurt me." She looked like she wanted to argue further but finally nodded. "Just for tonight. Tomorrow we will figure something else out." But tomorrow came, and then the next day and the next, and Maya was still there. Graham did not mind at all. In fact, he found he enjoyed having her presence in his home. The cabin felt less empty, less lonely. She helped with chores without being asked, proving to be remarkably capable. She could cook better than he could, even with his limited supplies, and she had a way with his small garden that made the struggling plants seem to perk up. More than that, though, he enjoyed her company. They talked in the evenings after the day's work was done, sitting by the fire and sharing stories. Maya told him about her childhood, about learning beadwork from her mother and learning to ride from her father. She spoke about tribal traditions and beliefs, explaining things Graham had never understood about native culture. In turn, Graham shared his own stories, carefully edited versions of his past that left out the worst violence but conveyed the journey he had been on. He told her about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about losing his parents to cholera before the war started. He spoke about cattle drives and the vast open spaces of Texas, about learning to survive in the wilderness. With each passing day, Graham found himself more drawn to Maya. It was not just her beauty, though she was certainly lovely. It was her intelligence, her resilience, the way she could be utterly serious one moment and laughing the next. She had a quick wit and a sharp tongue when she wanted to, but also a gentle compassion that showed itself in small kindnesses. He caught himself watching her more often than he should, noticing the way sunlight caught in her hair, the graceful movements of her hands as she worked, the sound of her laughter. It had been so long since he had felt anything like this, and part of him was terrified by the intensity of these growing feelings. Maya, for her part, seemed content to stay. She never spoke of leaving or returning to her tribe. Sometimes Graham caught her looking at him with an expression he could not quite read, something thoughtful and wondering. But she always looked away when she noticed him watching, and neither of them spoke of the tension building between them. A week after Maya had arrived, Graham woke to find her already up, standing in the doorway and looking out at the dawn. He had gotten used to sleeping on his makeshift bedroll by the fire, and he lay there for a moment just watching her silhouette against the growing light. "You are awake early," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned, and he could see she had been crying again, though quietly this time. "I had a dream about my mother," she said. "I miss her so much. I wish she were here to tell me what to do." Graham sat up, concern flooding through him. "What do you mean? Maya, has something happened? Do you want to leave?" "No," she said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "No, I do not want to leave. That is the problem. I should want to leave. I should want to go back to my people, find a way to make peace with Running Bear, rebuild my life there. But I do not want that. I want to stay here with you, and I do not know if that is right or wrong." Graham stood and moved to where she stood, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough to see her face clearly in the dim light. "Why would it be wrong to stay somewhere you feel safe and happy?" "Because staying here means giving up my old life entirely," Maya said. "It means becoming an outcast from my tribe, living between two worlds and not truly belonging to either. And it means something else too." "What?" Graham asked, though he thought he knew. Maya looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It means admitting that I have feelings for you, feelings that I should not have. We have known each other only a week, Graham. It is too soon, too fast. And yet when I think about leaving, about never seeing you again, it hurts in a way I cannot describe." Graham's heart was pounding so hard he thought she must be able to hear it. "Maya, I have those same feelings. I have been fighting them all week, telling myself I am being foolish, that I am taking advantage of your situation. But the truth is, I have never felt this way about anyone before. When you are near me, everything seems brighter somehow. When you smile, I feel like I could take on the whole world, and when I think about you leaving, I feel like something vital would be ripped away." "This is madness," Maya whispered, but she was moving closer to him. "Maybe it is," Graham agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "But maybe it is the best kind of madness." They were so close now that Graham could feel the warmth of her breath. He raised his hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and gently cupped her bruised cheek. The bruise had faded to yellow-green now, almost healed, but it still made him angry to see it. "You are the most remarkable woman I have ever met," Graham said quietly. "You are brave and smart and kind. You deserve someone who will cherish you, who will honor your choices and your voice. I know I am not perfect, I know my past is full of mistakes, but if you would let me, I would spend every day trying to be the kind of man who deserves you." Maya's eyes were wide, her lips parted in surprise. "You would truly want me?" "Even though I come with nothing, even though I would bring trouble and complications into your life. You would bring joy," Graham corrected. "You would bring laughter and beauty in life. As for trouble, I have handled worse. We would face it together." "Together," Maya repeated, as if testing the word. Then she closed the last bit of distance between them, rising up on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was soft and sweet and tentative, both of them testing this new territory. Graham wrapped his arms around her carefully, as if she might shatter if he held too tight. Maya melted against him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "I want to stay," Maya said firmly. "I want to build a life here with you if you will have me. I do not care what anyone says or thinks. This feels right, you feel right. My mother always told me to follow my heart, and my heart is telling me to stay." "Then stay," Graham said, pressing his forehead to hers. "Stay and let us see what we can build together. I promise I will do everything in my power to make you happy, to give you a good life." "You already make me happy," Maya said, smiling through her tears. "Just by being you, just by seeing me as a person rather than property. That is all I have ever wanted, to be seen and valued for who I am." They stood there in the doorway holding each other as the sun rose fully, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start for both of them. Graham knew there would be challenges ahead, that not everyone would approve of their relationship. But looking at Maya's radiant face, feeling her in his arms, he knew they could face anything as long as they faced it together. The next few weeks passed in a haze of happiness that Graham had never experienced before. He and Maya fell into an easy rhythm, working together during the day and spending their evenings talking and reading and simply enjoying each other's company. They were careful to maintain propriety, Graham continuing to sleep by the fire while Maya took the bed, but the connection between them deepened with each passing day. Maya proved to be an invaluable partner in every way. She was knowledgeable about plants and herbs, teaching Graham which ones were edible and which had medicinal properties. His garden flourished under her care, and she even planted new things that she foraged from the surrounding wilderness. She knew how to preserve food for winter, how to tan hides properly, how to do 100 things that Graham had been struggling with on his own. More than that, though, she brought warmth and life to his home. She sang while she worked, traditional Shoshone songs that Graham did not understand but found beautiful nonetheless. She decorated the cabin with small touches, hanging dried flowers and arranging his sparse possessions in ways that made the space feel more like a home. She laughed at his jokes and teased him gently when he took himself too seriously. Graham found himself falling more in love with her every day, though he was careful not to push for more than she was ready to give. He knew she had been through trauma, and he wanted her to feel safe and respected. But he could not help the way his heart leaped when she smiled at him, or the way his whole body came alive when she touched his hand in passing. One evening, about 3 weeks after Maya had arrived, they were sitting outside watching the sunset when she suddenly spoke. "Graham, I think we should get married." He nearly choked on the coffee he was drinking. "What?" Maya looked at him steadily, though he could see nervousness in her eyes. "I have been thinking about it. People already assume we are living together improperly. If we marry, it would be more respectable, more acceptable. And I want to marry you. I love you, Graham Bishop. I think I have loved you since that first day when you offered me shelter without asking for anything in return." Graham set down his coffee cup carefully, his hands shaking slightly. "Maya, I love you too. God help me, I have never loved anyone the way I love you, but are you sure? Marriage is forever, or it should be. Once we do this, there is no going back." "I do not want to go back," Maya said firmly. "I want to move forward with you. I know it has only been a few weeks, but I am sure of this. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You are a good man, Graham. You make me feel safe and valued and loved. Why would I want anything else?" Graham reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you. I will be honored to be your husband. But Maya, you need to understand what you would be getting into. Life with me will not be easy. This ranch is small and poor. I do not have much to offer you." "You have yourself," Maya said simply. "That is all I need." The question of how to actually get married proved more complicated. They could not go to the preacher in Shoshone town without causing a significant stir, and Graham was not even sure the man would agree to marry a white man to a native woman. Some folks were progressive enough to accept such things, but many more were not. It was Maya who came up with the solution. "In my tribe," she said, "marriage is a much simpler thing. Two people stand before witnesses and declare their intention to be together. They exchange gifts and make promises to each other. That is all that is needed. Would that be enough for you?" "More than enough," Graham assured her. "I do not need a fancy ceremony or a preacher's blessing. I just need you." They decided to marry in the traditional Shoshone way, out by the creek where Graham had first found Maya. It seemed fitting somehow, a way of honoring where their story had begun. Graham rode into town to buy fabric and supplies, enduring the curious looks and questions from the shopkeeper. He did not explain what he was buying for, not wanting to deal with the gossip that would surely follow. Maya used the fabric to make herself a new dress, working by candlelight in the evenings while Graham pretended to read but actually just watched her with undisguised adoration. When she finally finished the dress and put it on to show him, he felt his breath catch. She had used traditional designs but adapted them slightly, creating something that blended her culture with elements of white fashion. She looked absolutely stunning for his part. Graham cleaned up as best he could, trimming his beard and putting on his best clothes. They were not much, just plain cotton shirt and trousers, but Maya smiled when she saw him, and that was all that mattered. On the day they chose for their wedding, early September with autumn just beginning to touch the air, they walked down to the creek together. Graham had worried about having no witnesses, but Maya assured him the creek itself would witness their vows, along with the sky and the trees and all of nature around them. In her tradition, she explained, the land itself was sacred and could serve as witness. They stood facing each other in the dappled sunlight, the sound of running water providing music for their ceremony. Graham held Maya's hands in his, marveling at how small and delicate they felt, while also knowing the strength that resided in them. "Maya Morningstar," Graham began, his voice shaking slightly with emotion. "I never expected to find love when I came to this territory. I thought I would live out my days alone, and I was content with that. But then you came into my life, and everything changed. You brought light and joy and purpose where before there was only solitude. I promise to honor you, to respect you, to stand by your side through whatever troubles may come. I promise to love you with everything I am for all the days of my life. You are my home, Maya. Wherever you are, that is where I belong." Tears streamed down Maya's cheeks, but she was smiling. "Graham Bishop," she said, her voice clear and strong despite the tears. "You saved my life in more ways than one. You gave me shelter when I had nowhere to go. You protected me when I was in danger, and you showed me that it was possible to be loved for who I am rather than what I could provide. I promise to be your partner in all things, to share your burdens and your joys. I promise to make this house a home, to stand with you against whatever the world may throw at us. I promise to love you completely, holding nothing back, for all the days we are given." Graham had made a ring for her from a silver coin he had been keeping, hammering it flat and working it into a simple band. It was rough and imperfect, but Maya's eyes lit up when he slipped it onto her finger as though it were made of pure gold. "With this ring, I thee wed," Graham said, using the traditional words he had heard at the few weddings he had attended. Maya pulled out a leather cord strung with beads she had made. "With this cord I thee wed," she said, echoing his words. She tied it around his wrist, and Graham saw that she had worked their initials into the bead pattern. Then they were kissing, sealing their vows with a passion that had been building between them for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Graham picked Maya up and spun her around, making her laugh with pure joy. "Mrs. Bishop," he said wonderingly. "Maya Bishop. How does that sound?" "Perfect," Maya said, cupping his face in her hands. "It sounds absolutely perfect." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, and for the first time since Maya had arrived, Graham carried her over the threshold properly, making her shriek with surprised laughter. That night, with the blessing of their self-made vows, they truly became husband and wife in every sense. Graham was gentle and patient, mindful of Maya's inexperience, and she responded with a passion that took his breath away. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed that was now truly theirs to share, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. Maya traced patterns on Graham's chest with her fingertips, and he ran his hands through her long hair, marveling at how soft it was. "Are you happy?" Graham asked quietly. "More happy than I ever imagined possible," Maya said, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. "I have a husband I love, a home I am proud of, and a future full of hope. What more could I want?" "Children," Graham said, then immediately worried he had overstepped. "I mean someday if you want them. I would love to have a family with you, but only if that is what you want too." Maya propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with a soft smile. "I would love to have your children. I think you would be a wonderful father, patient and kind and strong. But let us have some time to be just us first, yes. Let us learn each other before we add more people to the mix." "That sounds perfect," Graham agreed, pulling her down for another kiss. The next few months were the happiest of Graham's life. As autumn turned to winter, he and Maya worked together to prepare the cabin for the cold months ahead. They gathered firewood, preserved food, and made sure everything was secure and weatherproof. Maya's knowledge of traditional methods combined with Graham's practical experience made them an effective team. They also began to cautiously venture into Shoshone town together. Graham knew they would face judgment and gossip, but he refused to hide Maya away as if he were ashamed of her. The first few trips were tense, with people staring and whispering. Some folks were openly hostile, muttering slurs under their breath. But there were also some who were kind, who treated Maya with respect and even welcomed her. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the general store, took a particular liking to Maya. She was a widow in her 50s who had no patience for prejudice or small-mindedness. When one of the other customers made a rude comment about Graham and Maya's marriage, Mrs. Patterson threw the man out of her store and banned him from coming back. "Anyone who has a problem with you two being married can take their business elsewhere," she declared firmly. "I have known Graham Bishop for 3 years, and he is a good man. And Maya, you are always welcome here, dear. Always." It was small kindnesses like that which helped them build a life together despite the challenges. Graham began to take on occasional work in town, doing carpentry and repairs for people who needed help. He was skilled with his hands, and word spread that he did good work for fair prices. Maya sometimes came with him, and she started selling her beadwork to Mrs. Patterson, who displayed it prominently in the store. Her work was so beautiful that it sold quickly, providing them with extra income they had not expected. Winter came on hard and cold, with snow piling up deep around the cabin. But inside, Graham and Maya were warm and content. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other from Graham's small collection of books. Maya was working her way through Treasure Island and loving every page. Graham had started teaching her more complex reading and writing, and she proved to be a quick learner. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing dreams and fears and memories. Graham told Maya stories about his childhood that he had never shared with anyone, moments of joy and sadness that had shaped who he became. Maya spoke more about her parents and her life before they died, helping Graham understand her culture and traditions more deeply. One particularly cold night in January, they were lying in bed listening to the wind howl outside when Maya suddenly spoke. "Graham, I need to tell you something." The serious tone in her voice made Graham prop himself up immediately, concern flooding through him. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine," Maya said, but she looked nervous. "Better than fine, actually. Graham, I think I am with child." For a moment, Graham could not process the words. Then understanding hit him like a lightning bolt, and joy exploded through his chest so intensely it almost hurt. "Really? Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be," Maya said, her nervousness giving way to a tentative smile. "I have missed my monthly courses twice now, and I have been feeling strange in the mornings. My mother told me once what the signs were. I think we are going to have a baby." Graham let out a whoop of joy that made Maya laugh and pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as though she might break. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby. Maya, this is incredible. This is the best news I have ever heard. You are truly happy?" Maya asked, searching his face. "I know we said we would wait, have time to ourselves first." "I am ecstatic," Graham assured her. "Yes, we said we would wait, but sometimes life has other plans. This baby was made from love, Maya. How could I be anything but overjoyed?" Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks, but she was smiling so wide it lit up her whole face. "I am so glad. I was worried you might think it was too soon, that we were not ready." "We will never be completely ready," Graham said honestly. "But we will figure it out together, the same way we have figured out everything else. This baby will be so loved, Maya. We will give it the best life we possibly can." They spent the rest of the night talking about the future, making plans for the baby who would arrive sometime in late summer. Graham was determined to build an addition onto the cabin before the baby came, creating more space for their growing family. Maya wanted to make clothes and blankets, using both traditional Shoshone methods and techniques she had learned from white women in town. As winter slowly gave way to spring, Maya's pregnancy became more obvious. She had morning sickness for a few weeks that left her pale and exhausted, but Graham took over her chores without complaint and made sure she rested as much as possible. By April, she was feeling better, and her belly had started to round noticeably. One day in May, they were working in the garden together when the sound of approaching horses made them both look up. Graham felt a familiar tension grip his shoulders. Memories of the last time visitors had arrived unannounced flooding back. But when he saw who led this group, he relaxed slightly. Grandmother Willow rode at the head of a party of 5 other people, all women from Maya's tribe. They were leading a pack horse loaded with goods, and their faces were friendly rather than threatening. Maya dropped her gardening tools and ran toward them, calling out in Shoshone. Grandmother Willow dismounted with help from one of the younger women and embraced Maya warmly, speaking rapidly in their native language. The old woman's eyes went immediately to Maya's pregnant belly, and a huge smile crossed her weathered face. She said something that made Maya laugh and nod. "Graham," Maya called, switching to English. "Come meet my friends." Graham wiped the dirt from his hands and walked over, unsure what to expect. Grandmother Willow looked him up and down assessingly, then nodded as if satisfied with what she saw. "You have been good to her," the old woman said. It was not a question. "I have tried to be," Graham said honestly. "Maya is everything to me. I would do anything for her." "This I can see," Grandmother Willow said. She gestured to the pack horse. "We have brought gifts, wedding gifts and gifts for the coming baby. Maya is family, even if she chooses to live apart from the tribe. We do not forget our own." Graham felt emotion tighten his throat. He had worried that Maya's choice to stay with him would mean losing her connection to her people entirely. To know that at least some of them still cared for her, still considered her family, meant more than he could express. The women unpacked the horse, revealing an incredible array of gifts. There were beautifully crafted blankets, clothing, dried foods, herbs and medicines, and toys clearly meant for a baby. There was also a cradle board, intricately decorated with beadwork that must have taken weeks to complete. "This was your mother's cradle board," Grandmother Willow told Maya, handing her the precious object. "I have kept it safe, waiting for the day you would need it. Now that day has come." Maya clutched the cradle board to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She and Grandmother Willow spoke in Shoshone for a long time, and even though Graham could not understand the words, he could feel the love and connection between them. The women stayed for several hours, sharing a meal and visiting. They spoke a mixture of Shoshone and English, translating for Graham when he looked confused. They told Maya news from the tribe, gossip and stories about people she had grown up with. It was clear they missed her and wanted her to know she had not been forgotten. Before they left, Grandmother Willow pulled Graham aside. "You are a good man," she said quietly. "I see how you look at Maya, how you care for her. This is what she deserves. But I must tell you, not everyone in our tribe is happy about her choice. Running Bear especially still holds anger in his heart. And Standing Wolf, he has spoken of revenge, though most of us think it is only empty words from a wounded pride." "Should I be concerned?" Graham asked, his protective instincts immediately aroused. "Perhaps," Grandmother Willow said honestly. "I do not think they would attack openly, not after the council ruled in Maya's favor, but it would be wise to stay alert. Men with wounded pride can be unpredictable." "I will keep her safe," Graham promised, "whatever it takes." The old woman patted his arm. "I believe you will. Take care of her, Graham Bishop, and take care of that baby. May it be the first of many, and may they all be healthy and strong." After the women left, Maya was quiet for a while, clearly processing the visit. Graham gave her space, working on the cabin addition while she sat in the shade with her mother's cradle board, running her fingers over the intricate designs. "Are you all right?" Graham finally asked when evening approached. Maya looked up with a peaceful smile. "Yes, I am better than all right. I was worried that choosing you meant losing my heritage entirely, losing my connection to my people. But seeing Grandmother Willow today, having her bring my mother's cradle board, it helped me understand that I do not have to choose between two worlds. I can honor both. I can be Maya Morningstar Bishop, both native and married to a white man, and that is okay." "More than okay," Graham said, sitting beside her. "Your heritage is part of who you are, and I love every part of you. I want our children to know about your culture, to understand both sides of their background. We will teach them to be proud of where they come from." Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you so much. Sometimes I still cannot believe how lucky I was that day I stumbled onto your land." "I was the lucky one," Graham corrected, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You changed my whole life, Maya. You made me believe in love and hope and the future again. Before you, I was just existing. Now I am truly living." The summer passed peacefully. Graham finished the addition to the cabin, creating a separate room that could serve as a nursery. Maya prepared everything for the baby's arrival with the help of Mrs. Patterson and a few other women from town who had warmed to her over the months. Despite some continued prejudice from certain quarters, Maya had managed to carve out a place for herself in the community through her kindness, and her beautiful craft work. As Maya's due date approached in late August, Graham became increasingly nervous. He had seen animals give birth plenty of times, but the idea of Maya going through labor terrified him. What if something went wrong? What if he could not help her? What if he lost her? Maya seemed to sense his worry and did her best to calm him. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she reminded him gently. "I will be fine. We will be fine." Mrs. Patterson had agreed to come help when the time came, having assisted with many births over the years. She made Graham feel slightly better by assuring him that Maya was healthy and strong, that everything would likely go smoothly. But he still worried. The labor started on a warm evening in late August, with Maya's water breaking just as they were finishing dinner. Graham immediately went into a panic, running around the cabin gathering supplies and generally being more hindrance than help, until Maya laughed and told him to go get Mrs. Patterson. Graham rode into town faster than he had ever ridden before, practically pounding on Mrs. Patterson's door. The older woman took one look at his panicked face and nodded calmly. "It is time, then. Let me get my things." She rode back to the cabin with Graham, talking calmly the whole way about how births usually went and what to expect. Graham tried to listen and absorb the information, but his mind kept racing ahead to all the terrible things that could go wrong. When they arrived back at the cabin, Maya was pacing the main room, one hand pressed to her lower back. She looked up when they entered and smiled despite obvious discomfort. "That was fast." "I may have ridden a bit recklessly," Graham admitted. Mrs. Patterson took charge immediately, sending Graham to heat water and gather clean linens. She examined Maya and declared that everything looked normal, that it would likely be a few hours before the baby arrived. Those turned out to be the longest hours of Graham's life. He tried to be helpful, but mostly he just held Maya's hand and felt helpless as she labored to bring their child into the world. She was incredibly strong, walking and moving and using breathing techniques that Grandmother Willow had taught her during one of her visits. Even in the midst of intense contractions, she remained focused and determined. As midnight approached, the contractions grew closer together and more intense. Mrs. Patterson checked Maya again and nodded with satisfaction. "Almost time. The baby is coming soon." Graham positioned himself behind Maya, supporting her as she squatted in the traditional way she had told him her people used for births. Mrs. Patterson coached and encouraged from below, and after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 minutes, the baby's head emerged. "One more big push," Mrs. Patterson said. "Come on, Maya, you can do this." Maya bore down with a primal cry, and suddenly the baby slid free into Mrs. Patterson's waiting hands. For a heart-stopping moment, there was silence. Then the baby let out a loud, healthy wail, and Graham felt tears spring to his eyes. "A boy," Mrs. Patterson announced, quickly wrapping the baby in a clean blanket and handing him to Maya. "You have a beautiful, healthy son." Maya cradled the baby against her chest, tears streaming down her face. Graham wrapped his arms around both of them, completely overwhelmed with emotion. Their son, he thought wonderingly. They had a son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and his mother's brown skin, though lighter than Maya's. His eyes were squeezed shut as he cried, tiny fists waving in the air. He was perfect. "Hello, little one," Maya whispered, her voice full of wonder. "Welcome to the world." Graham could not speak past the lump in his throat. He just held his new family, marveling at the tiny life they had created. After a few minutes, Mrs. Patterson gently took the baby to clean him up properly while she helped Maya deliver the afterbirth and made sure everything was as it should be. "Everything looks good," she declared finally. "You did wonderfully, Maya, and you have a healthy baby boy. Congratulations to you both." After Mrs. Patterson left with promises to check in the next day. Graham and Maya lay in bed with their son between them, both too overwhelmed and excited to sleep, despite the exhaustion they felt. The baby had settled down after nursing for the first time, and he lay sleeping peacefully, occasionally making small sounds that melted his parents' hearts. "We need to name him," Maya said softly, trailing a finger down their son's tiny cheek. They had discussed names but never fully decided. Now, looking at their perfect baby boy, Graham knew exactly what felt right. "What about Gabriel?" he suggested. "It means messenger of God, and his middle name could be something from your culture." Maya considered this, then smiled. "Gabriel Nahiasi Bishop." Nahiasi means 3 eagles in my language. It is a name of strength and vision. "Gabriel Nahiasi Bishop," Graham repeated, testing how it sounded. "I love it. What do you think, little man? Do you like your name?" Baby Gabriel yawned hugely, making both parents laugh quietly. He seemed completely unimpressed with the question, content to sleep and occasionally root around looking for food. Those first weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Gabriel was generally a good baby, though he kept them up at all hours with his need to feed and be changed. Maya handled motherhood with the same grace and competence she brought to everything else, though Graham could see the toll the sleepless nights took on her. He helped as much as he could, learning to change diapers and rock Gabriel to sleep. On the nights when Maya was too exhausted to function, Graham would walk the cabin floor for hours with Gabriel against his shoulder, singing off key lullabies and telling his son stories about the future they would have together. Mrs. Patterson came by regularly to check on them, bringing food and offering advice and support. She had become a true friend to both of them, one of the few people in town who fully accepted their relationship without judgment. Other visitors came too, some of Maya's friends from the tribe stopping by with gifts and congratulations. Grandmother Willow came when Gabriel was 2 weeks old, bringing more gifts and her blessing. She held the baby and spoke to him in Shoshone, welcoming him into the world and telling him stories of his ancestors. Maya translated for Graham, and he found himself moved by the beautiful traditions being passed down to their son. "This child will walk between 2 worlds," Grandmother Willow said seriously, looking at both parents. "He will face challenges because of this, people who will not accept him fully in either place. But he will also have the strengths of both worlds. Teach him to be proud of all parts of himself. Teach him that love matters more than the color of one's skin or the customs one follows." "We will," Graham promised. "We will teach him to be kind and strong and proud of his heritage from both sides." As autumn arrived again, 1 year after Maya had first come into Graham's life, they settled into a rhythm as a family of 3. The addition to the cabin made things less cramped, and they gradually accumulated the various items needed for a baby. Graham continued to do work in town while Maya cared for Gabriel and maintained their home. Her beadwork remained popular, and she had started teaching a few interested women in town her techniques, creating another source of income and friendship. Life was not perfect. They still faced prejudice from some quarters, harsh looks and whispered comments when they came to town. There were people who would always disapprove of their mixed marriage, who saw their relationship as wrong or unnatural. But there were also those who accepted them, who saw past skin color and culture to recognize 2 people who loved each other and their child. One cool October day, Graham was working on repairs to the barn when he noticed riders approaching. He felt the old tension return, hand drifting toward his gun before he recognized Grandmother Willow leading the group. But her face was grave and she rode quickly, suggesting urgency. "Graham," she called as she pulled up. "Is Maya here?" Inside with Gabriel, Graham said, concern flooding through him at her serious expression. What is wrong? I need to speak with you both. It is important. They went inside where Maya was nursing Gabriel. She looked up in surprise when Grandmother Willow entered, then concern when she saw the old woman's face. What has happened? Maya asked in Shoshone, then repeated in English for Graham's benefit. Grandmother Willow sat heavily at the table, suddenly looking every year of her age. It is Running Bear and Standing Wolf. They have been causing trouble, speaking against you both, stirring up anger. Most of the tribe ignores them, but they have gathered a few young warriors who listen to their words. I have heard talk, dangerous talk, about teaching you a lesson, about taking Maya back whether she wants to come or not. Graham felt cold fury wash through him. When? I do not know for certain, Grandmother Willow said. Maybe soon, maybe not for a while, but I wanted to warn you. You need to be careful to watch for them. They will likely come at night when they think you will not be expecting them. Thank you for warning us, Maya said quietly, though Graham could hear the fear in her voice. She looked down at Gabriel, still nursing peacefully, oblivious to the danger that might be coming for his family. After Grandmother Willow left with promises to send word if she learned anything more specific, Graham and Maya had a serious discussion about what to do. Graham wanted to take them into town where there would be more people around, more safety. But Maya pointed out that would only delay the problem, not solve it. If they are determined to come after us, they will find a way, she said practically. At least here, we know the land. We can prepare, set up warnings. Graham did not like it, but he could not argue with her logic. Over the next few days, he set up a system of bells and tripwires around the property that would alert them if anyone approached at night. He made sure his rifles were loaded and ready, positioned where he could get to them quickly. He hated turning his peaceful home into something resembling a fort, but he would do whatever was necessary to protect his family. The attack came on a moonless night 2 weeks after Grandmother Willow's warning. Graham woke instantly when the warning bell by the north approach jingled softly. He was out of bed in seconds, grabbing his rifle and positioning himself by the window. Maya sat up, clutching a still sleeping Gabriel to her chest. Stay down, Graham whispered. Keep Gabriel quiet if he wakes. He could see shadows moving outside, at least 4 or 5 figures creeping toward the cabin. They thought they were being stealthy, but Graham had expected this. He had fought in a war and survived by being prepared. These warriors might be skilled, but he had the advantage of position and forewarning. That is far enough, Graham called out in a voice that carried clearly in the night air. I know you are out there. Turn around and leave now, and no one needs to get hurt. There was a pause, then Running Bear's voice came from the darkness. Send out Maya. She does not belong to you. She belongs with her people. I belong with my husband, Maya's voice rang out, strong and clear. I chose this life, Running Bear. I chose Graham. You cannot force me to come back. You bring shame on our family, Running Bear shouted back. You lay with a white man, bear his half-breed child. You dishonor our parents' memory. Graham felt rage burn through him at the slur toward his innocent son, but he kept his voice level. The only person bringing shame here is you. You tried to sell your cousin into marriage against her will. You struck her when she dared to disagree with you. And now you come in the night like a coward to try to take what you have no right to. Maya made her choice, and you need to respect it. She is a woman, Standing Wolf's voice joined the conversation. Women do not get to choose. She was promised to me. I paid good horses. And you got your horses back, Graham reminded him. The debt was settled. This is not about horses or honor. This is about your wounded pride. You cannot stand that a woman rejected you, so you want to punish her for it. Enough talk, Running Bear snarled. We are taking Maya, whether you agree or not. Graham levered around into his rifle, the distinctive sound carrying clearly in the night. "First man who tries to enter my home gets shot. I am not bluffing. I am a good shot, even in the dark. Are you really willing to die for this foolishness?" There was silence for a long moment. Graham could feel the tension, could almost see the men outside weighing their options. He kept his rifle trained on where he thought Running Bear was standing, ready to fire if needed. Then a new voice entered the conversation, one Graham had not heard before. "Brother, perhaps we should reconsider." "Be silent," Running Bear hissed. "We have committed to this course." "To what end?" the new voice argued. "So some of us die and Maya still refuses to come back. What do we gain? Honor," Standing Wolf spat. "There is no honor in this," the other man said, louder now. "Only stubbornness and wounded pride. Grandmother Willow was right. We should let Maya live her life in peace." Graham heard the sound of an argument breaking out in Shoshone, voices raising in disagreement. He kept his rifle ready, not trusting that this was not some kind of trick. Beside him, Maya was praying softly, holding Gabriel close. Finally, Running Bear's voice came again, thick with anger. "This is not over. You may have won tonight, white man, but you have made enemies. Watch your back." "I have been watching it for years," Graham replied evenly. "A few more enemies do not scare me." He heard the sounds of the men mounting up and riding away, but he did not relax until the last hoofbeat had faded into the distance. Even then, he maintained his vigil by the window for the rest of the night, not trusting that they would not circle back. As dawn broke, Maya came to stand beside him, Gabriel sleeping against her shoulder. "Do you think they will come back?" "I do not know," Graham said honestly. "Maybe, maybe not. But we held them off tonight, and I think at least some of them realized how foolish this whole thing is. That is something." Maya leaned against him and he wrapped his free arm around her, keeping his other hand on the rifle. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I am sorry that loving me has brought this trouble into your life." "Do not apologize," Graham said firmly. "You have brought far more joy than trouble, and any trouble we face together. That is what marriage means." The next morning, Graham rode into town and reported the incident to the local deputy, a fair-minded man named Carson who had always treated Graham and Maya decently. Deputy Carson listened carefully and made notes, then shook his head. "Not much I can do officially," he admitted. "They did not actually attack you or damage property. But I will spread the word. Let people know to watch for trouble. And if they come back, you have every right to defend your home and family." Graham also stopped by to see Mrs. Patterson, who was outraged on their behalf. She immediately organized several of the more progressive townspeople to take turns riding by Graham's property regularly, an informal patrol system that would make it harder for Running Bear and Standing Wolf to try anything else. "You are part of this community now," Mrs. Patterson declared. "And we take care of our own. Those troublemakers will find out that they cannot just attack decent folk without consequences." Her support, and the support of others who rallied around them, meant more to Graham and Maya than they could express. It was tangible proof that they had built a place for themselves, that their relationship was accepted and valued by at least some of their neighbors. In the weeks following the attempted attack, there were no further incidents. Grandmother Willow sent word through one of her trusted contacts that Running Bear had been censured by the tribal council for his actions and warned not to bother Maya again. Standing Wolf had apparently grown tired of being made to look foolish and had turned his attention to other matters. It seemed, for now at least, that the threat had passed. As winter approached again, Graham and Maya were able to relax and enjoy their life together. Gabriel was growing fast, becoming more alert and interactive every day. He had his mother's dark eyes and his father's smile, and both parents were completely besotted with him. "I think he is going to be smart," Maya said one evening as they watched Gabriel grab at a toy she had made for him. "See how focused he is, how determined to figure things out." "He gets that from you," Graham said, pulling her close. "The intelligence and determination." "And the stubbornness," Maya added with a laugh. "Though I think you may have contributed to that trait as well." Graham could not argue with that. He kissed her temple, marveling as he often did at how his life had changed. A year and a half ago he had been alone, resigned to a solitary existence. Now he had a wife he adored and a son who amazed him every day. He had friends, a real home, a purpose beyond just surviving. "What are you thinking about?" Maya asked, studying his face. "How happy I am," Graham said simply. "How grateful I am that you stumbled onto my land that day. How different my life would be if you had not." "My life would be very different too," Maya said seriously. "And much worse. If you had not offered me shelter, if you had not stood up for me, I might be trapped in a miserable marriage right now. Or worse, I might have tried to run away and died alone in the wilderness. You saved me, Graham." "We saved each other," Graham corrected gently. "You taught me how to really live again, how to open my heart. Before you, I was just going through the motions. You made me want to build something, to create a real life instead of just existing." They sat together watching the fire crackle, Gabriel sleeping peacefully in his cradleboard nearby. The future stretched before them, full of possibility and promise. There would be challenges ahead, Graham knew. They would face more prejudice, more difficulties because of their mixed marriage and their mixed-race child. But they would face those challenges together as a family. The next few years passed in a blur of hard work and simple pleasures. Graham expanded his carpentry business, becoming known as someone who did quality work for fair prices. Maya's beadwork became so popular that she could barely keep up with demand. They saved money carefully, planning for the future and the security of their growing family. When Gabriel was 3 years old, Maya became pregnant again. This time they were better prepared, knowing what to expect. The pregnancy went smoothly, and in the spring of 1880 they welcomed a daughter into the world. They named her Grace Malia Bishop, with Malia meaning calm waters in Shoshone. Grace was quieter than Gabriel had been, with her father's light eyes and her mother's delicate features. From the beginning, she was a peaceful baby who seemed to observe the world with solemn wisdom. Gabriel was enchanted with his baby sister, constantly wanting to help take care of her. As the children grew, Graham and Maya worked hard to teach them about both sides of their heritage. Maya taught them Shoshone words and stories, traditional skills and beliefs. Graham taught them to read and write, shared his love of books and learning. Together, they taught the children about kindness, respect, and the importance of standing up for what was right. Grandmother Willow remained a fixture in their lives, visiting regularly and doting on the children. She taught them traditional crafts and told them stories of their ancestors. The children called her great-grandmother, and they loved her visits. Maya maintained connections with several people from her tribe, though she never went back to live among them. The children met their native relatives regularly, learning their language and customs. It was important to Maya that they knew where they came from, that they were proud of their Shoshone heritage. In town, the family gradually became less of a novelty and more just part of the community. Gabriel and Grace had friends among both white and native children. Mrs. Patterson remained one of their strongest supporters, treating Maya like a daughter and the children like grandchildren. Other friendships developed too, slowly building a network of people who accepted them as they were. When Gabriel was 6 and Grace was 3, Graham got an opportunity that changed everything. A wealthy rancher named Mr. Sullivan, who had hired Graham for several carpentry projects, offered him a permanent position as his foreman. It would mean steady income, real financial security for his family. Graham discussed it carefully with Maya, weighing the pros and cons. Taking the job would mean less time at home, but it would also mean being able to provide better for his family. Maya, practical as always, encouraged him to take it. "We can handle things here," she assured him. "The children and I will be fine. And knowing we have steady income, that we can plan for the future without worry, that is worth you being away during the days." Graham took the job and found he had a real aptitude for managing people and resources. Mr. Sullivan was pleased with his work, and over time, Graham moved from foreman to Sullivan's most trusted manager. The pay was excellent, and for the first time in their lives, Graham and Maya were not just surviving but actually thriving financially. They used the money wisely, expanding their house properly and improving the land. They bought better horses, more equipment, everything they needed to make life easier and more comfortable. They also saved money for the children's future, determined that Gabriel and Grace would have opportunities they had never had. Years passed in a rhythm of work and family, challenges and triumphs. Gabriel grew into a thoughtful, intelligent boy who loved books as much as his father. Grace proved to be artistically gifted, creating beautiful beadwork and drawings from a young age. Both children were comfortable navigating between white and native worlds, though they faced occasional prejudice from both sides. When Gabriel was 10, some boys in town started calling him names, taunting him about being a half-breed. Gabriel came home one day with a black eye and bruised knuckles, having finally fought back against his tormentors. Graham was torn between being proud that his son had stood up for himself and worried about where this kind of conflict might lead. "You did the right thing defending yourself," Graham told Gabriel as Maya tended to his injuries. "But remember, violence should always be the last resort. Words have power too. Sometimes the best way to fight ignorance is with intelligence and dignity." "They said terrible things about Mother," Gabriel said, his voice breaking. "They said she was a savage, that you should not have married her. I could not let that stand." Maya pulled Gabriel into her arms, holding him close. "I am sorry you had to hear those words. I am sorry people can be so cruel, but your father is right. You cannot change ignorant minds with your fists. You change them by being so good, so kind, so smart that they have no choice but to respect you." It was a hard lesson, one that Gabriel would have to relearn many times as he grew. But he had good parents to guide him, and slowly he learned to navigate the complicated world he had been born into. Grace faced similar challenges as she grew older, dealing with children who did not understand or accept her mixed heritage. But where Gabriel responded with anger, Grace responded with quiet dignity. She simply refused to engage with people who were cruel, focusing instead on the friends who valued her for who she was. When Gabriel was 15 and Grace was 12, Grandmother Willow passed away peacefully in her sleep at the remarkable age of 87. Her death hit the whole family hard, especially Maya, who had lost one of her last connections to her parents and her old life. The funeral was a traditional Shoshone ceremony, and Graham and the children attended, honoring the woman who had meant so much to all of them. "She was the one who made it possible for me to stay with your father," Maya told the children as they stood over Grandmother Willow's grave. "She stood up for me when others would not. She believed that I should have a choice about my own life. Never forget her courage and her wisdom." Time continued its steady march forward. The children grew into young adults, Gabriel inheriting his father's height and his mother's dark coloring, Grace becoming a beautiful young woman with her mother's grace and her father's light eyes. Both were intelligent, capable, and ready to make their own way in the world. Running Bear had died years earlier from illness, and Standing Wolf had moved to a different area. The threats that had once loomed so large in their lives faded into memory, old dangers that had been overcome. Graham and Maya, now in their 40s, looked back on the life they had built with pride and satisfaction. It had not been easy, but it had been worth every struggle. They had created a family, raised good children, and proven that love could transcend the boundaries society tried to place on it. One evening, with both children grown and starting their own adult lives, Graham and Maya sat on their porch watching the sunset. It was late summer, nearly the anniversary of the day they had met, and the air held that particular quality of light that came just before autumn. "Do you ever regret it?" Graham asked, taking Maya's hand in his. "Giving up your old life, dealing with all the prejudice and difficulty that came with marrying me?" Maya looked at him with surprise. "Never. Not for a single moment. Graham, you gave me freedom when I had none. You gave me love, respect, partnership. You gave me 2 beautiful children and a life full of meaning and joy. How could I possibly regret any of that?" "I just want to make sure you have been happy," Graham said. "That has always been my goal, to make you happy." "I have been more than happy," Maya assured him, squeezing his hand. "I have been blessed beyond measure. Yes, there have been hard times. Yes, we have faced challenges, but we faced them together, and that made all the difference." Graham pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "I love you, Maya Bishop. I loved you from almost the first moment I saw you crying by that creek, even though I did not recognize it then. You changed my entire world." "And I love you," Maya said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "My rescuer, my partner, my best friend. You are everything to me." As darkness fell and stars began to appear in the vast Wyoming sky, they sat together in comfortable silence. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Their story had started with tears by a creek and an offer of shelter, but it had become so much more. It had become a testament to the power of love, the importance of standing up for what was right, and the possibility of finding happiness even in the most unlikely circumstances. Years continued to pass, bringing new joys and occasional sorrows, as life always does. Gabriel married a kind woman named Sarah, the daughter of Mr. Sullivan, who had grown up knowing and liking the Bishop family. They gave Graham and Maya 3 grandchildren who visited often and brought new life and laughter to the homestead. Grace married a mixed-race man named Thomas, whose father was white and whose mother was Lakota. They understood each other's experiences in a way few others could, and their wedding was a beautiful blend of multiple traditions. They settled nearby and also blessed Graham and Maya with grandchildren. Mr. Sullivan eventually retired and sold his ranch to Gabriel, who had proven himself a capable manager and had his father's work ethic. Gabriel ran the ranch successfully, creating jobs and treating his workers fairly, following the example his parents had set. Grace became a teacher, working with both white and native children in a small school in Shoshone. She believed in the power of education to bridge divides and create understanding. Her mixed heritage made her uniquely suited to help children from different backgrounds learn to see each other as people rather than stereotypes. Through it all, Graham and Maya remained at the center of their growing family, the foundation on which everything else was built. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies showing the wear of hard-used lives. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experiences and mutual respect. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children organized a celebration. Friends and family came from near and far, filling the expanded homestead with noise and laughter. There were white faces and native faces, people from town and people from the reservation, all coming together to honor a couple who had shown that love knew no boundaries. Graham stood with Maya beside him, looking out at the gathering, and felt overwhelming gratitude. He thought back to that young man of 27 who had been so lost, so resigned to a lonely life. He never could have imagined then that his life would turn out like this, so full and rich and blessed. "What are you thinking?" Maya asked, the question she had asked him countless times over the years. "I am thinking about that morning I heard you crying by the creek," Graham said honestly. "How I almost did not go investigate, how I almost just ignored it and went about my business. I am thinking about how different my life would be if I had made that choice." Maya smiled, the smile that still made his heart race even after 3 decades. "I'm glad you are a man who investigates crying women rather than ignoring them." "I am glad you were brave enough to trust a stranger," Graham countered. "Not many people would have taken that risk." "I am glad for all of it," Maya said simply. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy. It has all led us here to this beautiful life surrounded by family and friends." "We have been so blessed, Graham." As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, as grandchildren played and friends laughed and family gathered close, Graham pulled Maya into his arms for a dance. Someone had brought a fiddle, and music filled the air, a mix of traditional songs from multiple cultures blending together into something new and beautiful. They danced slowly, holding each other close, moving to music only they could hear. Around them, life swirled and continued, but in that moment, there was only the two of them, two people who had found each other and built a life together against all odds. Years later, when both Graham and Maya were well into their 60s, they would sit on their porch in the evenings and tell stories to their grandchildren. They spoke of the old days, of first meetings and early struggles, of standing up against prejudice and building a life on love and determination. The grandchildren loved these stories, asking to hear them again and again. "Tell us about the day you met," the grandchildren would plead. And Maya would speak of running through the darkness, frightened and desperate, stumbling onto a stranger's land and finding unexpected kindness. Graham would describe hearing her crying by his creek and making the choice to investigate, to offer help to someone in need. "The important thing," Graham would tell the children seriously, "is that we saw each other as people first, before anything else. Not white or native, not man or woman, but people who needed and could help each other. That is the secret to everything, treating each other with dignity and respect no matter what differences might exist. And love," Maya would add, smiling at her husband. "Love that sees past surface differences to the heart underneath. That kind of love can overcome anything." The grandchildren would nod solemnly, absorbing these lessons, carrying them forward into their own lives. They were the future, these children of mixed heritage who navigated multiple worlds with increasing ease. They were proof that their grandparents' love had created something lasting, something that would ripple outward through generations. When Graham was 68 and Maya was 62, Graham's health began to fail. Years of hard work had taken their toll on his body, and his heart was growing weak. He faced this final challenge with the same courage he had faced everything else in his life, determined not to be a burden to his family but grateful for every extra day he was given. Maya nursed him with devotion, just as he had cared for her through 2 pregnancies and various illnesses over the years. Their children and grandchildren visited often, filling the house with love and noise and life. Graham treasured each visit, each moment with the family he had helped create. On a warm evening in early September, nearly 40 years after he had first met Maya by his creek, Graham slipped away peacefully in his sleep with Maya holding his hand. She woke to find him gone, and though her heart broke with grief, there was also gratitude. They had been given so many years together, so much love and joy. Not everyone was that blessed. The funeral was enormous, a testament to the lives they had lived and the respect they had earned. People came from all over the territory, both white and native, to pay their respects to a man who had been known for his fairness, his kindness, and his unwavering love for his family. They buried Graham on a hill overlooking his property, in sight of the creek where his life had changed forever. Maya lived another 5 years after Graham's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She never remarried, saying that she had already had the love of her life and needed no other. She spent her remaining years teaching traditional crafts to her grandchildren, telling stories of the old days, and keeping Graham's memory alive for all who would listen. When Maya finally passed away peacefully at the age of 67, they buried her beside Graham on that hill, reuniting them in death as they had been united in life. Their children commissioned a beautiful headstone that bore both their names and a simple inscription in both English and Shoshone. Love knows no boundaries. The homestead remained in the family, passed down through the generations. Gabriel's children and Grace's children and their children after them continued to live on that land, farming and ranching and building their own lives. The original cabin that Graham had built was preserved and maintained, a reminder of where it all began. The story of Graham and Maya became a family legend, told and retold to each new generation. It became a story about courage and kindness, about standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. But most of all, it was a story about love, the kind of love that transcended boundaries and created something beautiful and lasting. Years turned into decades, and decades turned into a century. The world changed dramatically, but on that hill overlooking the creek, 2 headstones stood side by side, a permanent testament to 2 people who had dared to love across cultural divides. Wildflowers grew around the graves each spring, and the wind whispered through the grass, carrying echoes of laughter and love that would never truly fade. Their legacy lived on in their descendants, in the genes passed down and the values instilled. The Bishop family became known for being fair-minded and open-hearted, for seeing people as individuals rather than stereotypes. This was Graham and Maya's true gift to the future, not just children and grandchildren, but a way of being in the world that rippled outward, touching countless lives. And sometimes, on warm summer evenings, if you stood by that creek where it all began and listened carefully, you could almost hear the echo of a woman crying and a man's kind voice offering shelter and hope. You could almost see 2 figures standing hand in hand, looking toward a future they would build together through love and determination and unwavering faith in each other. Their story had ended, as all stories must, but the love that had inspired it would never truly die. It lived on in every kind word spoken, every hand extended to someone in need, every person who chose to see past differences to the humanity underneath. Graham and Maya had shown that such love was possible, and in doing so, they had changed not just their own lives but the world around them. This was their legacy, this was their gift, and it would endure long after their names were forgotten. A quiet reminder that love, true love, could overcome any obstacle and create something beautiful from even the most unlikely beginning.